Hello and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Our guest today is a Kingsville resident who has published short stories and poetry in various Canadian literary magazines, including the Antigonish Review and Prism International. Gordon Grisenthwaite's short story, The Fine Art of Frying Eggs, was the winner of the John Kenneth Galbraith Literary Award in 2013, and his short story, Splatter Patterns, was longlisted for the 2021 CBC Short Story Prize. Well, today we're going to discuss his novel, Home Waltz, which was a shortlisted finalist for the Governor-General's Award for English Language Fiction at the 2021 Governor-General's Awards. Gordon, welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Well, thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed your book, and it was one of the books that, I'm a very fast reader, but it was one of the books that I really wanted to take my time reading because it was so packed with so many interesting things. But before we get to the book, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in BC. Lytton's my hometown. I'm a member of the Lytton First Nation. And I write.
Did you live there a long time?
I lived in BC until 2015, so a very long time.
Mm-hmm. When did you realize that you wanted to be a writer? I mean, is that something you knew when you were a teenager?
The correct answer is yes, I knew, but I didn't believe it until I was well into my 40s.
Why?
Life, the universe, everything.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of support at home. And writing is no way to make money. And people like me did not write. I'm not saying, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't necessarily encouraged?
I was, except for my grandmother, I was actively discouraged.
Wow. Well, look at you. Your grandmother must have been a good influence.
The best.
Yeah.
I mean, she was far from perfect, but she was an incredible woman. And until I met Susan, probably the only really strong. The main reason that I'm probably still here.
Wow, that's quite a statement. Yeah. Who were your literary influences once you got going?
Oh, golly. Just about everybody I read, for one reason or another. Positive influences, absolutely. Thomas King, Christopher Moore, an American humorist, Tom Robbins, another American humorist. Lewis Carroll. The list changes, and it's actually a lot longer than the names I'm able to pull up right now.
What about when you started writing? I know you sort of reading your acknowledgements that there were a number of people who, once you did get going, who were encouraging and people you actually studied with and learned from.
Well, Nina Riccio goes near the top of the list.
He's a terrific fellow, isn't he?
He's fantastic.
Yes.
And I went back to school in 2016 when he was at University of Windsor, and I had him for 2 classes and had his expertise and encouragement. Although sometimes I think he wanted to strangle me because I'm a little slow in the uptake. But that's all good. But he was huge. And the rest of the crew at the university, Carl Jurgens, who introduced me to Indigenous literatures and showed me how to read critically and showed me, if it wasn't for him introducing me to Thomas King's King Kong versus Post-Colonial, the essay he wrote back in 1990, I don't know where my writing would have gone. This book was already in process. In fact, Home Waltz, I workshopped it in Nino's novel writing class.
That must have been interesting.
Oh, he was incredibly helpful. And probably one of the reasons I didn't drop out of school, because it was pretty stressful.
Yes, I think he was.
Your very first guest.
He was. You knew that.
I did.
Yes, it was delightful having him. And so I can imagine why and how he would have been a tremendous influence for you. And I have to say, now that I know you read some of these humorists, I can also sort of see why there was so much humor in your writing. I mean, I was going to say to you, do you have a good sense of humor? Are you funny?
I can laugh at myself. So, yeah, I think I have a pretty good sense of humor. I don't know about being funny, though.
Because I'm jumping ahead here of things I want to ask you, but I wanted to read this. I kept saying to my husband, oh, my God, he's so funny. The way he puts language together is just so humorous. The Smiths, the couple who came to, I guess, the area where your main characters were, and you you said the Smiths, white as Aunt Polly's fence. I mean, I don't think I've sort of heard, people's skin colors described in those kinds of ways, and then their health food. Their health food and Ramalam Ding Dong stuff. It just sort of was really cool, I thought. And then it smelled like ground up gym socks. And then you said the character Bimbo, he was chewing like a thresher. And Aunt Mavis, so old she went to school with the Virgin Mary. And the last one was he had a swagger like a 2-year-old in a poopy diaper. Do people comment on those qualities in your language?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't set out to be funny. The humor just emerged. And in fact, a long time ago, my first time going through school, I was reading at a class reading, and people started laughing. And I thought, oh, God, what did I just screw up?
Are they laughing at me?
Something like that, yeah. And people were pointing out it's funny. I didn't see it as funny. I just saw it as part of the story. So I've learned, and I think since going back to school this time to finish my degree, I had to finish my bachelor's degree before I could get my master's. I started paying attention and trying to be funnier, not deliberately funny, but seeing jokes or funny lines and working on them to make them stronger.
Because there's a great difference between trying to be funny, but writing language that is incredibly humorous, without trying to make a joke. It's really quite a talent, I think.
Oh, thank you. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, where did the title of the book come from?
Home Waltz. Home Waltz. Well, I have a cousin, Randy Earl. At every dance when we were kids, starting in the third set, bands did 4 sets. So dance went from like 8 o'clock until 1 o'clock, or 8 o'clock till midnight or something like that. And starting in the third set, he would start shouting, "Home Waltz, Home Waltz." And Home Waltz is the last slow dance before you go home. And if you're dancing with somebody, you're not going home alone, almost certainly. And, I guess that's where the title came from.
It takes place over 36 hours. The 36 hours, there was so much packed into 36 hours. It could have been 3 weeks for me. And I kept looking at the time codes and thinking, oh my God, how much got done? How much did they do? Because their dialogue was so intense in all these between the time codes. And why did you choose 36 hours?
I wanted it to be a weekend. Initially, it was going to be 48 hours, but that seemed a little long. And so when you get right down to it, a lot can happen in a very short period of time.
Sure can. And there are so many interesting characters. Let's start with your main character, Squito? Skeeto. Tell me about him.
Okay, he's a half-breed. He doesn't really feel like he belongs on res, and he doesn't belong in the white community. And he's definitely not wanted at home, at his father's home. And he's at home with his grandmother. And he wants to fit in with his friends, but there's kind of a hierarchy. And he's near the bottom in his estimation. But I think he overvalues some of his friends and undervalues some of the others. Mm-hmm. And so his place in the hierarchy is totally imaginary, ultimately. But because he believes it, it doesn't matter if it's imaginary or not.
Right. And he's quite self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think self-deprecation is a valuable survival tool. It's it's better than giving into ego and all of that. I mean, Skinny is ruled by ego, and things don't really go well for him, and he doesn't necessarily see it.
No. Squito, short for mosquito.
Mm-hmm.
Mosquito. How did you come up with him? Did you he have a bit of you in him?
Oh, of course, but there's a bit of me in all those characters, every single one of them.
I wondered.
But Skeeto is a direct descendant of W.P. Kinsella's Indian stories. I loved them when I was a kid. I loved the first 3 books, and then it dawned on me that I don't know a single Indian who speaks with kind of a Caribbean accent, and in places Kinsella's Indians do, and Kinsella's Indians don't look anything like anybody I have ever known. And I started to get angry. And I got to a point where I couldn't read them anymore. And I just sat down to write. And poof, out came Skeeto, pretty much as you see now. I mean, it's more polished because I'm actually a far better writer than I was back then.
Yeah. But the language is so real. I felt there were times when I could hear the characters talking. And I thought, I have to ask you, is that the real way teenage boys on the res talk?
I can't speak about today's teens. I haven't been one for a while.
No.
But, really? Yeah, I'm going to say it's the way teens talk, at least in my circle. And that includes native and non-native kids. So to that end, the dialogue is quite authentic.
Mm-hmm. The another character was Crazy Tom. Tell us about Crazy Tom.
Oh, I love Crazy Tom.
Yeah, me too.
When I was a kid, there was a guy in town who used to, he lived, I think he had a shack made of driftwood in a ditch on West Side Road. And he would drink gasoline for money. I didn't actually see him do that, but I was on the street when he was at the gas station. I missed it. I kind of wish I'd seen that. But and there's also a couple of other people I knew from North Vancouver. They both fried themselves. One went to South America and fried himself on drugs, and the other one was a glue head. And they were both interesting people.
Mm-hmm. I thought when I first read A Glass of Premium, I missed it. And then I realized that it was premium gas. I thought, oh, wow. Like, I could never come up in my writings with those, a character like that. And to actually have a character say, I want a glass of premium, I thought it was quite remarkable. And it just made it more real, I thought.
Oh.
Because there is a problem with it, isn't it? With drinking or sniffing gas, etc. And even though I thought you made that a bit funny, a glass of premium, and I thought underneath it is sort of quite an underlying poignant problem. Yeah.
Yes.
The other characters, the two women, Pixie and Ingrid. Who did you like best?
Ultimately, I would have fallen for Pixie because, red hair, green eyes. It's typical, one of the typical male fantasies. But I think Ingrid's a far more interesting character. I think she has a lot going on. Mm-hmm. I don't really like the way she ended up with Bimbo.
That was surprising. Did it surprise you?
Yeah, it wasn't. I sat down to write. I've done this a million times. She was going to be angry with Skeeto, but she was going to go to the dance with him, and things were going to work out really, really well. And then all of a sudden, she's not, and they're not.
Strange how that happens, isn't it?
And I have another story, and I had to rewrite that story. It's a novella. I'm rewriting it because of the way this thing happens with her and Bimbo. It changed the whole outcome of the novella, which takes place almost 6 months or so after, almost a year after this novel.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Before I go on, because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, is there a favorite piece you like to read?
She zooms straight to me. Her tiny, perfect hand slips into mine like a knife into its sheath. In all angel voice, she says, "Hi, I'm Pixie Holland." I sigh. Every drop of my new cool swaggers off, taking all of my best words with it. A duncy grin bubbles to the front of my face, and along with it, every duncy thing a guy could say around a girl. One word from my idiot face will drive off Pixie and every girl within earshot. "Come back, cool! Come back!" I swallow hard, manage to spit out kokoshiki. Everyone calls me Skeeto. She laughs, warm, sweet.
And the writing is all like that. It really is. It just goes along so quickly. There's a lot of sex going on, talk about sex, thinking about sex, and then you call the sex scene troublesome. Why?
It was the hardest part of the book to write. The first time I showed it to a reader, the reader got very angry with me and said, he doesn't have the right to rape her. He doesn't have the right to come out of this a winner. And the way I wrote the scene is, he doesn't win. He loses. Skeeto loses. And it went a little bit farther than they went a little bit farther than I wanted them to, but and I debated because this was coming out around Me Too and cancel culture was on the rise, and I thought, well, this is going to be the end of my career. But you know what? It's part of the story, and it's an important part of the story. It's pivotal. It needs to be there, and I went with it.
Mm-hmm. There was such a conflict in Skeeto, and he didn't go into this lightly, and you could the booze, all this pent up lust. There were so many things going on in that scene. And did you ever have an experience like that?
Maybe. Well, to stick with Skeeto, he's learning that there's a difference between love and sex. And he's chasing sex. And it's not working out for him. And he hasn't figured out why, because all of his friends, or so they claim, are having sex. Lots of it. Good sex, great sex. And he's the only one who's not. And so he's desperate, and he thinks he has to go forward, but he knows it's wrong. And he doesn't want to be wrong and disrespectful, but he is not going to be a man until he gets the deed done. So, yeah, lots of conflict.
Mm-hmm. And based on your experience of being a young man, a young teenager, do you think the other boys were lying?
Probably. Almost certainly. But, yeah, almost certainly. And some of the girls, too.
Yes. The girls who came in, did you, when you were, deciding that it was going to be this group of girls, was there anywhere in particular or any group of girls you kind of pulled out of your background?
None whatsoever. The thing that was important to me in this scene, or this part of the book, is, well, true story. When I was in grade 8 or 9, I was back home and going to high school, and I started following around this new girl who was really quite pretty, and she was new, so she didn't know me yet, so I had a chance if I could get there before she got to know me. And then one of my classmates comes up and goes, "Ever sick, Gord? That's your cousin." Oh, I did not know. So I have to be careful.
That'd put a damper on everything.
Yeah. I don't want to be lusting after my relations.
It really is difficult, isn't it, to navigate that time in people's lives? Well,
again, speaking to my generation, probably yours, I think we're probably the same.
Mm-hmm.
In growing up as a kid in the 70s, sex was everything. I mean, sex has always been, but it's always been something whispered about, not talked openly about. But in the 70s, it became talked about openly. And if you weren't getting any, you weren't a person, you weren't a man. And that's always been implied through advertising and writing, but done in quite a prim and proper Victorian manner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was also a neat thing at 10:15 in the book. It seemed to be freezing cold, and then at 10:30 there was a Chinook, and everything got warm. People who don't live out west probably wouldn't believe that, but I know that it happens very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was kind of cool. Did you have a character you liked least of all?
Oh, I despise Bimbo. Mm-hmm. Personally, I despise Bimbo. Mm-hmm. And I let my hatred, I'm going to say hatred, I don't really hate him, but hatred of him color his actions, and the way people reacted to him. And it turns out he's based on a very real person who I despised all the way through elementary school and high school.
I can see if Bimbo is anything to go by, why you would not like him very much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's fairly close to the kind of person he was in real life.
And then there's the relationship with the cops. Is that also something you experienced when you were growing up? That, the cops not being very respectful, even, when it wasn't warranted?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I personally do not really trust the police. I mean, when I was 19 in Fernie, BC, I got beat up by 4 cops. Just because I was having coffee with a waitress one of the cops had a crush on. She didn't reciprocate. And there's that, and there's other stuff. As a teenager in North Vancouver, we were targeted. They called us a gang. We weren't really a gang.
Yeah.
But,
as it always does, when conversations are really, really interesting, they go very quickly. So a final question.
Okay.
Do you find that more Indigenous writers are coming to the forefront?
Absolutely. Have you seen this year's new releases? It's a stellar list, including, Geisha Grice, Catherine Vermette, Alicia Elliott has a new book. Yeah, bumper crop of Indian writers this year. It's very cool.
It's very cool and it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gordon, where can people find your book?
Biblioasis always has a few copies, and they're probably signed. And my new book is also at Biblioasis. It just came out September.
Gosh, so much to talk about. And thank you so much for coming and chatting about your book.
Well, thanks for having me.
Great pleasure. Well, that's it for this edition of Scribes and Songsters. A big thank you to my guest, Gordon Grisenthwaite. Thanks to our Scribes and Songsters team, producer Brad Sweet and technical producer and editor Gary Glass. Grateful thanks to Tony Toldo and the Toldo Foundation, and to Neil and Tina Queering for their support. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon, right back here on Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Bye for now.